Here at Wolverine Biopharmaceuticals, we are proud to announce our novel therapeutic agent, ParADox, the partial mu agonist Doxiretin. Doxiretin was discovered at Wolverine Biopharmaceuticals in late 2006. After identifying successful analgesic effects and favorable pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic profiles in preclinical trials, we began our full-scale development. This effort required the involvement of our 5 primary divisions: clinical development, regulatory affairs, medical affairs, commercial affairs, and our informatics focus group. The following presentation outlines the development of ParADox. Recently, our primary competitor, buprenorphine, was issued a black box warning designation for increased risk of respiratory depression, coma, and death. As Doxiretin has shown to be an effective analgesic with a very promising safety profile, this has opened up a new market opportunity for ParADox. In order to capitalize on this opportunity, we want to tackle this with a 3-pronged approach. In clinical development, we want to prove Doxiretin is safer than buprenorphine while remaining non-inferior in efficacy. Our medical affairs department will focus on building relationships with therapeutic area experts in pain management to inform them of our promising results in stage 2 and 3 of clinical trials. Additionally, we will interact with key pharmacy benefit managers and hospital systems to ensure ParADox is widely accepted into insurance and hospital formularies. Finally, we will continue to highlight these benefits during our post-approval marketing phase to emphasize Doxiretin as the leader and best of the partial mu agonists on the market.
Hi everyone, my name is Aaron Contos, and I will be going over clinical development. Here we can see a timeline of our development process and where we currently are in the later stage. Our study was a non-inferiority design to recognize and address comparison between our product and current standards of products on the market for opioid withdrawal, such as buprenorphine. Thus far, we have been on schedule with no delay in moving through the trial phases, and we are currently approaching our projected release in 2020. As a partial mu agonist, the ideal indication for our product is for managing symptoms of opioid withdrawal. The most similar product on the market right now, as I mentioned, is buprenorphine. There is what is known as a ceiling effect with our product. That means therapeutic effects will reach maximum levels without increased dosing. This is also the ideal agent for patients experiencing hyperventilation, as it induces respiratory depression. An additional indication for this product is for neonatal abstinence withdrawal syndrome, which is becoming a greater problem among our patient population amid the opioid epidemic. Studies have shown reduced length of treatment time in comparison to morphine, which has previously been the standard of care. Our current formulation for patient convenience and control release of the active ingredient is an oral capsule in which microspheres containing the API will only release the product in acidic environments. This is to mitigate potential side effects of a partial mu agonist. Going forward, we have interest in developing an oral PLGA nanoparticle dosage form to enable greater specificity for the target receptor. This will be to reduce euphoria and therefore reduce abuse potential. It is of the utmost importance to be responsible in development of our product because patient safety must be our top priority in these times of widespread drug misuse and abuse of similar products. Within our company, clinical development is intertwined with other functional areas, and this figure shows 2 ways in which we collaborate. Both of these areas are covered later in the presentation, but this just serves as a reminder of how regulatory affairs aids in the submission process to bring our product to the market and refine our clinical study, and medical affairs has worked to publish our trial data and plan ahead for post-marketing educational efforts. Within our company, clinical development is intertwined with other functional areas, and this figure shows 2 ways in which we collaborate. Both of these areas are covered later in the presentation, but this just serves as a reminder of how regulatory affairs aids in the submission process to bring our product to the market and refine our clinical study, and medical affairs has worked to publish our trial data and plan ahead for post-marketing educational efforts. Modern pharmacists have essential roles throughout the clinical development process, and that is no different in our company. As medication experts with training in a broad range of topics, pharmacists have had input in our drugs discovery, the formulation for the dosage form, providing clinical trial support, and creation of literature to satisfy regulatory requirements for advancement through the development process.
Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Kim.
And we are the Regulatory Affairs team from the University of Michigan, and today we will be talking about the regulatory path for approval for Doxiretin. Our basis for our IND starts with the previous animal pharmacology and toxicology studies. Based on animal safety, we can show that our drug with the current formulation would be ready for clinical trials. After summarizing our drug properties and manufacturing protocols in the IND, we will move on to explain our clinical trial protocol. We intend to highlight our drug formulation using polymer-linked microspheres to deter abuse and ensure the drug is only released in the gut lumen. Our clinical trial protocol would want to emphasize the non-inferiority safety trial to show that our drug is safer than the current standard of care.
For the NDA for Doxiretin, our company will focus mainly on training of healthcare professionals, additional safety labeling, and patient safety measures. Since Doxiretin is a medication that requires REMS, it is important that both patients and healthcare providers fully understand the potential risks and benefits of Doxiretin. Training programs for providers and warning labels for patients will help ensure that the medication is only administered under conditions that have been tested and found to be safe. Our main goal with these measures is to do everything we can to prevent overdose, misuse, and abuse.
Based on the current opioid epidemic, we believe chronic pain is a serious condition. Under this classification, our drug would qualify for priority review. This would quicken the review process to 6 months, from the FDA shortening the time to market. As current opioid options have a multitude of serious side effects, we hope that with our biomarkers, we will also qualify for accelerated approval. However, we do not see our drug receiving fast track or breakthrough status during the approval process.
We believe that pharmacists have an advantage in regulatory affairs since they can apply an extensive clinical background for trial design, use interdisciplinary communication to liaise with the FDA, and provide the patient-provider perspective that other professionals may not be able to provide. Now we will pass it off to our medical affairs team.
Hi, I'm Roxana, and today I will talk to you about our medical affairs team. Our medical affairs team includes individuals with advanced training in diverse disciplines. PharmDs, MBAs, nurses, prescribers, and PhDs will be key team members who will be able to provide unique insights based on their background. Pharmacists have advanced pharmacotherapy knowledge and are well suited to provide information about similar drugs on the market and their respective places in therapy. Prescribers can take into consideration different therapeutic options, and nurses can provide insight into the patient's perspectives. Team members with business experience can help us identify target market segments based on areas of underserved need and thus ensure developmental resources are aimed in a successful direction. PhDs will be able to answer highly scientific, technical questions about the drug product under different conditions. We will provide our internal stakeholders with information such as published data, including clinical study reports and clinical case reports, and standard response letters. Additionally, it is imperative to provide the internal stakeholders with information on our competitors' products and educate our team on what advantages our product has compared to other medications in the market. Training tools such as slide decks, modules, and courses will be provided to further educate our internal stakeholders. These will all be provided via a separate site on the company's intranet, which will allow easy access to these materials for our company's employees and facilitate continual education about our product as well as the company vision and department goals, which are set by our medical affairs leadership team. Ideally, the medical affairs team will be involved from the very beginning of the drug development process, because this will ensure that research and development pursues the development which meets an appropriate target product profile. This will ensure a seamless transition from early stages of research and development to full-scale product development, drug launch, and beyond into phase 4 studies. During clinical trials, the medical affairs team can work alongside regulatory affairs to ensure that appropriate regulatory guidelines are followed. Once clinical trials are complete, the medical affairs team is essential to help disseminate information about the trial and collaborate with all necessary parties to ensure our drug launch strategy is executed well. Upon drug approval, the medical affairs team will play a key role in educating healthcare providers and patients about the specific disease state and the safety and efficacy of our drug. Specifically now, to external stakeholders, the timing of medical information dissemination would be dependent on the population the medication serves and the urgency or need of this medication in healthcare. If this medication were to change the landscape of healthcare and meet requirements for breakthrough designation, the medical information should be given to external stakeholders as early as possible. For instance, we would provide early phase data to inform external stakeholders of our product's potential benefits for our population. Then, more robust data on late phase trials will be provided about the drug's efficacy and toxicity profile, but this will occur later on in the development process and thus be provided a bit closer to launch. In terms of off-label information, we will respond to unsolicited requests from patients, caregivers, healthcare professionals, academics, and formulary committees for information about our drug. We will answer specific questions with truthful and non-promotional information, even if the request requires providing of information for unapproved indications. This information will be given only as a response to specific questions and only to the individual who requests this information. Therefore, off-label indications will not be discussed in group settings. So if such a question arises during any group setting, such information will be provided to the individual following the session. In terms of the value of a pharmacist in medical affairs, pharmacists have a direct patient care experiences as well as in-depth knowledge of pharmacotherapy, which will all be beneficial in the field of medical affairs. We are able to understand how patient care occurs in practice, as well as describe other therapeutic treatment options, which will help when engaging with clinical experts. In addition, a pharmacist's clinical skills will be key to establishing credibility and forming relationships with future key opinion leaders and external stakeholders. Pharmacists provide various skills such as obtaining patients' medication histories, attending rounds on multidisciplinary teams, and conducting medication reviews. These experiences will allow for us to understand a patient's needs and therefore aid in the development of patient resources and educational materials.
Yeah, it's your boy Mason over in commercial, and I'm about to break it down to you why ParADox rocks and why our stocks are going to knock investors' socks off. Doxiretin is a partial mu opioid receptor agonist with similar binding affinity to that of buprenorphine, but a less marked opioid effect at similar degrees of receptor saturation. As such, our drug will provide a lessened degree of pain relief compared to more potent analgesics like fentanyl that have a leading market share in palliative care. However, Doxiretin's analgesic effects will be sufficient to meet the needs of patients in less severe pain. Alongside this, our drug will result in less euphoria that we believe will lessen incentives for its abuse, as will the quickness with which its ceiling effects are achieved. The diminished degree of sedation will also allow patients to retain a higher degree of functional status while taking the drug. Its binding affinity will prevent other opioids from competing at the receptor, preventing concomitant opioid use from having an effect on the patient. Because of this fact, alongside of our favorably long half-life, we believe Doxiretin will represent a lesser abuse and overdose potential compared to other opioids on the market. Its long half-life also prevents withdrawal symptoms from occurring, as it is effectively self-tapering, and patients will also be able to take the medication less frequently, improving its convenience. This pharmacokinetic profile represents an incredibly lucrative marketing opportunity matched by no other opioid products in the current market context of the opioid epidemic. With all of the well-founded concerns expressed about opioids by stakeholders like the U.S. government, pain care specialists, addiction specialists, primary care doctors, patients, and the U.S. society as a whole, a new opioid isn't generally cause for excitement, but given the current opioid epidemic, there is a fertile niche for a drug that can offer a lower risk of misuse, abuse, or addiction potential, especially if it also has a lowered possibility of overdose. We believe Doxiretin's pharmacokinetic properties make it a well-matched candidate to fill this niche. As such, we'll be marketing our drug to those expressing concerns about the opioid epidemic. We intend it to be used in patients meeting criteria for increased risk of addiction, those in chronic pain with significant life expectancy and high functional status goals, patients hesitant to start treatment due to fear of addiction, those who cannot be maintained on NSAIDs or acetaminophen alone, and those meeting criteria for factors predisposing risk to respiratory depression. We will not be marketing this drug directly to consumers, however, as we believe it would be in poor taste with the current epidemic state. Instead, we will focus our efforts and our medical science liaisons to target chronic pain and addiction specialists, informing them of our safer alternative. Another valuable opportunity when marketing this drug is the fact that the closest competitor product, buprenorphine, recently received a new black box warning for respiratory depression. As such, we believe the fact that our drug, Doxiretin, would not have this risk may give us a marketing opportunity with prescribers who are worried about their patients that are maintained currently on approved partial mu agonists. Patients, payers, prescribers, and the U.S. government are all worried about this epidemic, and our drug is the first step at the type of product that would move in the direction of making the problem better rather than worsening it, while still meeting the needs of patients with chronic pain. To recap a couple of key selling points that we'll be using in our marketing materials, Doxiretin has a lower risk of addiction, lower risk of overdose, allows patients to maintain a higher functional status, and may also be a suitable alternative to patients who cannot be maintained on NSAIDs or Tylenol alone, especially for any patients who may have risks potentiating respiratory depression. For our communication strategy with Doxiretin, we will primarily focus on targeting pain care specialists working in larger hospital systems with increased numbers of chronic pain patients, such as the Veterans Affairs hospitals. We will also be marketing to Medicare and PBMs that would have a larger proportion of these patients, and will be seeking early tier placement to lessen addiction risks, as this would be proactively using the product rather than attempting to insert it into treatment after patients have already become addicted. We believe it's best at this time to avoid any direct-to-consumer advertising, as it would be in bad taste. Our core message will be to establish Doxiretin as a safer alternative to buprenorphine, and in order to prove this, beyond the data in our pharmacokinetic profile, we plan to conduct Phase 4 real-world evidence trials comparing the rates of misuse, abuse, and addiction compared to other opioids. We believe this is what insurance would probably find convincing enough to justify this favorable tier placement compared to other opioids. Pharmacists are uniquely positioned to understand the commercial sale and use of medications through their retail experience. This job experience insight allows them to better understand the concerns that patients may have with their individualized medications, as well as understanding the disease state as a whole through a therapeutic training. This will play well into how effective we are in the marketing of novel therapeutic agents. Pharmacists are able to discuss and articulate how patient care occurs in practice, especially related to over-the-counter pain management. Understanding the demographics and patient profile that would be at risk for opioid misuse, abuse, and addiction is also important in designing and launching a new drug sales strategy. Understanding how the non-medical determinants of health, as well as comorbid conditions such as depression, can be relevant to addiction is also incredibly important, so the pharmacist, who is at the epicenter of the care team in managing these other different conditions, can be a valuable player in the opioid space. Pharmacists also have various valuable skills such as understanding business management and the supply chain components of working in a pharmacy, which help them be effective in commercial affairs. These skills will also allow pharmacists to be the intersection of patient care and commercial sale of medications, because pharmacists are uniquely qualified to understand the current commercial landscape, how that plays into the healthcare system, and what best meets the patient's needs. Finally, our pharmacological background to explain how the different pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic properties of a drug are relevant to the drug's place in therapy and to the market niche allows us to be good leaders in this area.
And finally, we want to acknowledge all the hardworking employees at Wolverine Biopharmaceuticals. Without their dedication and expertise, ParADox would not be the promising pharmaceutical product it is today. Thank you.